Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ningsi, and this opportunity I will discuss about the Harlem Renaissance. So, what is the Harlem Renaissance? The Harlem Renaissance refers to flowering of African American cultural and intellectual life during 1920s and 1930s. At the time, it was known as the New Negro Movement, named after the anthology The New Negro, edited by Len Locke in 1925. Centered in the Harlem neighborhood of the New York City, the movement impacted urban centers throughout the United States. Across the cultural spectrum, literature, drama, music, visual art, and dance, and also in the realm of sociology, historiography, and philosophy, artists and intellectuals found new ways to explore the historical experience of Black American and the contemporary experience of the Black life in the urban North. Challenging white paternalism and racism, African American artists and intellectuals rejected merely imitation the stylish Europeans and white Americans and instead celebrate Black dignity and creativity. The district of Harlem had originally developed in 19th century as the exclusive suburb for the white middle and upper classes. During the enormous influx of European immigrants in the late 19th century, as the once exclusive district was abandoned by whites who moved further north. Harlem became an African American neighborhood in the early 1900s during the Great Migration, in which many sought a better standard of living and real life from the institutionalized racism in the South. Other of African descent come from racially stratified communities in the Caribbean, seeking a better life in the United States. By 1930, 19,000 new arrivals joined the African American already living there, creating a community of the nearly 200,000.
One of the most highly applauded contributions of the Harlem Renaissance was the birth of jazz. Jazz is a combination of African music styles with the previously popular European music styles. This music, primarily performed by Black people, easily gained respect as a great art form, and it was the first time in America where the culture of African Americans became a desire of the majority of American citizens. New York was essentially where the Harlem Renaissance took place, and since it is such a melting pot amidst itself, there was no surprise that the movement integrated so easily into American culture. Many names came into their own during the Harlem Renaissance, such as Langston Hughes, Louis Armstrong, and Booker T. Washington. These people, as well as the many others, all brought huge transformations in Black culture. But with mass media and the public interest in jazz, their transformations in Black culture also translated into the entire American culture. All the cultures in New York willingly experimented with jazz, blues, and other African American art forms, and either were directly successful or ended up creating close imitation arts that began to merge and blend into all cultures. The blending of cultures helped to integrate society and make social change acceptable, which will eventually lead to the equality we have today. Another legacy of culture in Harlem Renaissance is Apollo Theater. Opened in 125th Street on 26 January 1934 in a former burlesque house, it has remained a symbol of African American culture. As one of the most famous clubs for popular music in the United States, many figures from the Harlem Renaissance found the venue for their talents and started their careers. The careers of Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, and James Brown, and later Michael Jackson and Lauryn Hill were launched at the Apollo. Once African Americans began to express their pride as well as their feelings towards injustice, it caused a flow of the African American culture into the modern society, and thus the Harlem Renaissance began. Throughout the movement, African Americans expressed their feelings through varieties of artistic ways. And the more they produced the works of art, the more people joined the movement. Many white people did not want the movement to continue, but others didn't take notice of what was really happening at first. Many just enjoyed the music and dancing and accepted it as it was without really acknowledging that it was thanks to the African Americans. The effects of the Harlem Renaissance were seen in the decades after, and even it can be seen today. African Americans were expressing their culture, and that increased their racial pride, which would eventually lead to the civil rights movement and more. The art that was created during the movement was also effective because it helped them express themselves, change white people's mind, and even created a music genre that was entirely their own but yet was accepted by most everyone.
Writer of the Harlem Renaissance created a wide range of literary work from poetry to plays to prose and to novel. The main themes of the writing were about racial identity, equality, black life in the South and North, and other racial issues. Author of the Harlem Renaissance used a different style of writing. It differed from the white standard form of writing and created their own writing style utilizing themes, idioms, and jargon that pertained to their culture and community. Some of the leading writers during the New Negro movement were Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Countee Cullen. No common literary style, artistic style, or political ideology defined the Harlem Renaissance. What united participants was their sense of taking part in common endeavor and their commitment to giving artistic expression to the African American experience. Some common themes excite, such as an interest in the roots of the 20th century African American experience in Africa and the American South, and a strong sense of racial pride and desire for a social and political equality. But the most characteristic aspect of the Harlem Renaissance was the diversity of its expression. The diverse literary expression of the Harlem Renaissance ranged from Langston Hughes' weaving of the rhythm of African American music into his poem of ghetto life, as in the Weary Blues, 1926, to Claude McKay's use of the sonnet form as the vehicle for his impassioned poem attacking racial violence. As the In We Must Die, 1919, McKay also presented glimpses of glamour and the grit of Harlem life in the above-mentioned Harlem Shadow. Countee Cullen used both African and European images to explore the African roots of Black American life. In the poem Heritage, 1925, for example, Cullen discusses being both a Christian and an African, yet not belonging fully to either tradition. Vixen, 1928, by novelist Nella Larsen, offered a powerful psychological study of an African American woman's loss of identity.
about the writer comes from this era, here we are gonna discuss about Langston Hughes. So, Langston Hughes is one of the major literary figures emerging during the Harlem Renaissance, of course. And Langston Hughes was an American poet born on 1 February 1902. Almost all of Hughes' works are reflective of the true culture of Black people, such as their sufferings, achievements, and also their fondness for all aspects of life, including music, food, languages, and so on and so forth. Well, move to his works. Talking about his works, one of the most famous of his works, the poem, which is with the title "The Weary Blues." This poem was published in 1926 within the collection of poems named Blues. This poem portrays a Negro who is a singer. It is representative of the history of Black people and their love of music. The title of the poem, The Weary Blues, and the context itself provides a direct reference to blues, which is a form of music developed by African Americans to promote the notions of freedom, independence, and individuality against slavery. The poem, with its title, a protagonist, and the context, portrays the life struggle of Black people and their history of turning towards smaller things in life to create happiness for themselves. The music, blues like jazz, was created and promoted by the blacks forced into slavery as a means to entertain themselves and escape from the harsh reality of discrimination and injustice, of course. Well, at first, the singer in the poem sings about putting his problems aside to enjoy life, but his second song indicates that the worries lay so heavily on his shoulders that even his beloved music doesn't seem enough anymore, and he expresses his wish to escape from the reality and the world permanently.